Hi, welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm here today to talk about whether it's an easy option to learn to knit if you're already a crocheter. Hi, welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah. I'm here with Knitting Nattler to help you learn to knit the easy way. Today I'm going to talk to you about knitting if you're already a crocheter. So it's not just knitting for beginners, but knitting for people who already have a love of yarn and know that they like working with it. So let's get down to it. I'm going to give you 3 pros and 3 cons. So I'm going to give you a balanced video and you can make the decision at the end. The first reason, and I've already mentioned it, is that the crocheters love yarn already. They like working with it, and you know if you're a crocheter that having yarn in your life is just a bonus. It's a beautiful thing. It can really help you get some me time during the day, and you know you're creating something, so you're going to love knitting just as much as you do crochet because it's the same thing. The second reason I think you can learn to knit if you're a crocheter is that you know you're willing to go through the learning curve. You had to learn to crochet at some point. It may have been a few years ago, it may have been a few months ago, but you are willing to learn over time. You've proved that to yourself. You've had slip-ups, you've had mistakes, you've got better, and it's just one of those things. You're willing to go through that process. So why not stick around and start knitting as well? Reason number 3 is that you learn 2 stitches in knitting. That's it, the knit stitch and the purl stitch. And guess what? We just mix those up and we carry on knitting. We create patterns and all sorts of fascinating textures to the knit just with those 2 stitches. It's not like crochet where you have to learn a crochet and a double crochet and a half double and a triple treble and goodness knows what. Your head fills with it. And also we talk about knitting and purling all over the world. We don't have to learn what it means in one place and what it means in another place. Knitting and purling, those 2 stitches are all that you need. Okay, stick around because I'm also going to say something slightly controversial in a minute, but let's go through the downside of learning to knit if you're already a crocheter. Here we go then, the downside part 1. There are more live stitches if you're knitting than if you're crocheting. That's right, if you're starting to knit, you're going to have multiple stitches live sitting on your needle. It's not like when you're crocheting and you have 1 stitch sitting on your hook. It doesn't matter that much. If you finish crocheting, you take the hook out and you just make sure the stitch is slightly larger. You put it down, you put it in your kit bag, and you're ready to start again the next day. If you're knitting, you can't take the needle out. You just have to learn to live with it. So that can be quite scary, but it's just a learning curve as well. Learn to live with the fear. Okay, the second thing that crocheters kind of get freaked out about if they want to start knitting is that you have to have 2 needles. You're holding one in one hand and one in another hand, and they work together. It was so easy when you just had a hook. But if you're starting to knit, I've actually know this can happen, not on my part, but on other people's part. You actually forget that you've got a second needle. So you can let it go while you're knitting and suddenly think, what am I doing? So you have to get used to it. It's muscle memory. It's just telling the hands what they have to do, and you will get used to it. Like I said, it's a learning curve. So that is the second dark side to learning to knit if you're a crocheter. Now, number 3 is even more scary. It is the dropped stitch. Okay, I'll say it again while you catch your breath. It is the dropped stitch. Yep. If you drop a stitch in knitting, it's scary. You can feel that you've lost all hope. But it's not a problem. If you realise when you're crocheting that if you make a mistake, if you miss a stitch, then there is a possibility that you're going to want to unravel it all the way back to that stitch just so that you can repair it and start again. I know if I was a crocheter, I'd go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, I missed it. No problem. Or I might repair it on the next row. But if you're a knitter and you drop a stitch, you can follow all the way back through that knitting and catch it up. So it's not so much a problem, and it may be scary. There's a lot of fear around it, but being a knitter is about fixing your mistakes just as much as it is about knitting. And I have lots of videos about fixing mistakes here on YouTube and in my courses, so it's not so much an issue, I hope, and don't let it put you off. Right, you have the dark side and the light side of learning to knit if you're a crocheter. I'm now going to say something controversial. I'm going to say learn to knit the English traditional route. And why would that be? Well, I learnt to knit first, and I was learning English traditional. And then I started to crochet. And the interesting thing was, when I was knitting, I was holding the yarn in my right hand, and when I was crocheting, I was holding it in my left hand. And that was a massive bonus to me. I had muscle memory for holding the yarn in both hands. I could do it at the same time, which meant when I wanted to do colour knitting, Fair Isle knitting, I was right on track. I could start like that. I didn't have a problem. I could hold my yarn in my left hand and I could hold my yarn in my right hand. That meant that I was speeding through it. The learning time was reduced and I really enjoyed it. And I must say, that is a bonus. If you want to learn to knit, if you're a crocheter, don't go the easy route and say, my left hand knows how to hold the yarn, so I'll learn the continental method. Just test yourself. Try the English traditional. It can be just as fast if you use a few tricks that I can show you here on YouTube about holding your yarn, about moving the needles and throwing the yarn as well. There are those few tips that will make it just as fast as continental knitting, but you will have the muscle memory in your right hand and in your left hand of holding the yarn, and it will really stand you in good stead as you move further with your knitting. There you go. That's all I have to say about crocheting for knitting. And yes, it was a balanced view to some point, but I'm a knitter, so I'm going to say start knitting. And yes, Knit with Hannah is all about teaching you to knit, whether you've been interested in yarn before or not. And whether you've been crocheting or knitting before, you can just pick it up and start. Great! I do hope I will see you hanging around here if you start knitting, and I love to see you subscribing, because then you'll see all of my videos as soon as they come out. So hit the subscribe button, click on like if you've enjoyed this video, and share it with your friends if you think all of your crochet buddies will love to know this too. You can all start being knitting buddies. Great! Thanks for joining me. I will see you again next week. Bye for now. Happy knitting.